Listen, laugh, and learn with Sacha and Ish as they share their experiences, thoughts, and tips to build skills that are not so average and a career that's not so ordinary. This is the Not So Breakfast Show.
All right, welcome to the Not So Breakfast Show today, the podcast for leadership and career development. And today we're getting a little bit matrix. We're talking reality over illusion. We're talking red pills and blue pills. And we're going to flash back to the matrix and try and pull some threads on that badass movie, which was epic in its day and still relevant now with some concepts. But to help me talk about that today, Sacha Coburn coming in all the way from, home, but not in the kitchen today.
I am coming to you from my office, and I just think I'm going to call you Neo for this entire episode. That's appropriate. You may call me Trinity. I'll allow it.
Brilliant. Well, Neo, of course, because he was the one, and they kept saying we're finding the one, and Neo was one rearranged. How did we miss that? What were we all doing in 1999 that made us miss that?
Well, if you rearrange it again, it's Eon, right? E-O-N, and that's like that's a long passage of time as an eon. So it doesn't matter what you do with those three letters. It's all very meta.
Love it. What have you been up to lately, Sash?
So today I've actually been in Auckland speaking. Super cool initiative. The Foodstuffs group have started this thing that's called Girls Who Own, and they invite girls who are still at school or at the start of their university careers to come and spend a week with them in the school holidays to learn all about what it takes to own your own business. And just had a fantastic chat to a bunch of girls today, and some of them were from my old high school, Onehunga High, so we were doing the represent thing. And as we were doing the introductions, it was really cute. I said, I went to Onehunga High, and one of them said, oh yes, I go to Onehunga High, I'm the head girl there. And I went, of course you are. Open up the wound. Let's just pour salt into my wound. I said, I was robbed of being head girl, but let's not spend any time dwelling on that. Good for you. Today's about you. I just did really deep.
Oh, brilliant. Well, what do you remember about the movie The Matrix back in 1999? I
have very fond memories of it, largely because you and I used to talk about it in terms of this whole idea of perception versus reality, and the line that we used to quote. We used to do quizzes and stuff, like great quotes from movies to see if people, it was just a kind of way of warming up a crowd or getting a group thinking, opening their minds and thinking a bit differently. And we used to use a quote from The Matrix, and I think nobody ever got it, but you and I, we enjoyed sharing the quote. And it was that quote where, I'll tell you the quote, it was, there is no spoon. Do you remember that? And it's when the kids were bending the spoons with their minds, and Neo was like amazed, like, how are they doing that? And the little kid just looked up and said, there is no spoon. And it was this kind of like jaw-dropping moment where you just went, oh yeah, everything is existing in this alternate reality or inside our minds. And of course I remember all the special effects, of course.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's probably the thing that really jumps out to me, is that amazing special effect where Trinity was being chased by Agent Smith, and gets cornered and then jumps up into that iconic pose that has been imitated time and time again from Shrek. If you remember Princess Fiona jumping up into that pose, right through a whole lot of different movies. And it really did set a completely new standard in cinematography. What I loved about the movie is I hadn't watched the preview. So I literally had gone in completely unaware of what the movie was about, what was going to happen. So when the reveal happened, after he metaphorically, took the blue pill, it was just revealed in front of me on screen, and I just had no idea what was going on.
With no warning, right?
Yeah, it was exceptional. And I think that whole question around the red pill, blue pill is something we're going to explore a little bit today, is what are those times that we are getting those signs, feelings, that kind of sixth sense that something isn't quite right, but we're just either not willing to accept it, or we are in denial, or we're not wanting to change our current reality because we're just enjoying what's going on too much. And really, I want to explore that from a personal perspective and maybe a professional perspective as well.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a great episode as we unpack those. I know that's terrible foreshadowing. You should never say it's going to be great, but I think it is. But even before we get there, how rare is it nowadays that you go to something without some expectation of what it's like? And part of the magic of what you've just described there is the experience of going in cold. You didn't know what was coming, whereas now, so often you watch a trailer and the trailer is the whole movie.
Yeah.
Essentially, it's all the plot points and you go, oh, why would I even bother? Or before we go to a restaurant, we go online and look at the menu to see if there's anything that we're going to enjoy, and we pick what we're going to want. And our lives end up being really kind of samey or vanilla, or there's less moments of opportunity for joy and surprise and wonderment because we like to know in advance what it is we're going to get so we don't waste our time.
Yeah.
And there's some benefits there, but you also see how much of our life is just planned, and we lose those moments of precarity where you're on the edge of something. And I think that's an important thing. Any of you guys who are in marketing or in sales or in business, it's like, how can you do that? How can you give people something that's completely unexpected? And that's what that Matrix experience, the movie experience, delivered to you, right?
Yeah. And also that our tolerance for sitting through something that we're not liking has been, I'm going to say, stolen from us or taken away because of the access of something else. So, I'd hate to be the old guy reflecting on old times, but when you used to go get your videos or DVDs from Video Easy or wherever the place was, you'd choose your one or your two and you'd bring it home, and that's what you would watch. Like, even if it was crap, you would sit there, you would persevere through. Whereas now I can watch a movie and I go, just not into it. And then you swap. So I'm trying to actually force myself to just stay watching something or listening to something, because I don't want to miss out on what could be coming because of a moment in time where you're just a little bit bored.
Well, two schools of thought. One is life's too short to watch movies you're not enjoying or read books that aren't worthy of it. Yeah. And what we can do now is we can just Google it. So if we're watching the film and we're like, we're not really that into it, we can Google it and we might see someone say, so hang in there because at the 20-minute mark it gets great. So you're kind of outsourcing all of your knowledge anyway. Other people say, don't bother, give it up. But we might not ever get to the point of this episode, Ish, because I've got something important to share with you. I was listening to Brett Goldstein's podcast, Films to be Buried With. And he was talking to Stephen Merchant, who's like the famous guy who co-wrote The Office, etc. He was saying when they do that film testing in Hollywood, they test lots of different versions of the film and the audience says what they liked, what they didn't like, which moments did they most enjoy, which moments did they didn't. Yeah. But what they used to do was they used to have throughout the movie, as each scene played, you could just be you'd be constantly pressing your button as to whether you were enjoying it or not. Was it stimulating you, etc. Yeah. And Stephen's like, how do you set up the joke if every single moment of the film is being assessed as, is this funny? Is this dramatic? Is this whatever? So some of the pleasure comes from the setup. It's long, it's slow, what's happening? Boom! Something happens. Yeah. If you don't have the leading up to the suspense, there is no reveal. Yeah. And what you're describing is we've taught ourselves, like if it's not instantly on, then forget it. We're going to give it up. And I think that's a danger for us in terms of our entire way that we process the world.
We'll be right back.
If there was one skill that could double your income, advance your career, and increase your ability to influence, it is the skill of presenting. Whether it's on stage, in the boardroom, or at a job interview, the 30-Minute Presenter program will help take you to the next level. So check out our Instagram page, click the link in the bio, and get started on the 30-Minute Presenter program. Yeah, well, if we want to even flip that even further into the warped reality that we are, all living in and moving into, is that the predictions around AI is there'll be movies coming out where you can change the end of the movie if you don't like it. So if you get to the point and you go, well, actually, I wish the hero hadn't died, then you'll be able to recreate the end of the movie and it will give you that ending. So it's like,
that sounds good.
Yeah, that
I
sounds
like that.
really helpful right now.
Well, that's like the pick a path.
Like
The books that we used to read when we were kids.
Yeah.
If you think he should go left, turn to chapter 12.
Yeah.
If you think he should go right, yeah. I love it. Right, blue pill, red pill. It's a choice, right?
That's right.
Pick your path.
Yeah.
Say more.
So why don't we start with the personal, maybe moments of denial. So if you think back to the movie, he was getting these experiences that he just kind of wasn't settled. He knew something wasn't quite right with his reality. And it's the acceptance of maybe there's a different way to do something, or maybe something is happening that is telling me. And often we need someone to help reveal that to us. And in the Matrix's case, in Neo's case, that was Morpheus. Morpheus comes along and gives him the choice of red pill, blue pill. Of course, we know he chooses the blue pill and then reality falls away. But I'm wondering if there's some stuff around like things like maybe ignoring a mental health problem that you may be starting to experience, a thought pattern that's running, a little bit of anxiety that's starting to surface, not quite coping with things the way that you used to. And I think the danger in sometimes just kind of, oh, it'll be fine. And then all of a sudden it's bigger than maybe if we had dealt with it originally, or suddenly it gets revealed and actually it's not fine and we've been ignoring something and haven't been resolving or working through something, and then all of a sudden it comes out.
I know when we talk about my cancer, I laugh about it to say, did I or did I not give myself cancer? And I choose to believe that I didn't, but I'm also brave enough to acknowledge that in the period leading up to that, I had a heightened state of anxiety for a long time. I just didn't recognize it as anxiety because I'm such an amazing coper. Like nothing is a problem for me. So I had multiple sticky professional situations that I was working through and I was just coping with them all. But I didn't sleep that well. I had this constant sort of nervous knot in my tummy, but I didn't understand that might not be good for my immune system. I was just like, oh, this is how it feels when things get tough. And I don't know about you, but when the going gets tough, the tough get going, and I'm tough, so off I go, right? And I just kept going. So I didn't feel like I was ignoring the signals. I literally didn't know those were signals. So part of that is to increase our awareness of every time we move from, let's call it a normal state, to recognize that is a signal. That is something that ought not to be continued for any length of time.
Yeah, and we build our tolerance for things, right? If we give the obvious example of alcohol, the first glass of wine you ever have just about knocks you on your ass, right? And then as you drink more of it, you can drink more and the effects, it's not the same. It takes you a lot longer to get to that state. Now, obviously we know that example, but that can be with stress, that can be with just dramas and your tolerance for things. But it can also get to the point that your body only has a certain amount of coping. So by the time it gets to the point where it's so out of sync, and I remember that experience when just before I'd had my first hip replacement, I was in Wellington and I had been in an immense amount of pain and literally on my last legs, so to speak. And I was in the Uber heading back and I'd been, just upping the pain meds, coping. And I was in the Uber going back to the airport and I just remember my eye started streaming and I was like, what the heck? And I took a photo and all of the blood vessels, you probably remember, it just blew out. Like it was bubbly and just red. Like it was like, not like a little bit, like it was red, like dark red. And I thought I was having a stroke and I'm like, I'm hopping on the plane, I'm going home. And I went to the doctor and he said, first of all, it looks bad, but it's not as bad as you think it is. But tell me what happened. I was kind of giving him the rundown. But he said basically my body just got to the point where it just couldn't handle it anymore. And it just kind of was like a shaken up Coke bottle and no released the top off. Just happened to come out my eye. So I think sometimes the pressure, and I probably should have recognised earlier on that the pain was increasing and I was masking it using more meds.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that we do is we also just minimize, and that's what you're doing with the meds.
Yeah.
I just increase my meds, I'm minimizing the pain. And I think we see this a lot in relationships where we go, oh, yeah, that person didn't speak to me that nicely, but that's okay. I was a bit late. Dinner was a bit late tonight, so fair enough. Or, I didn't do that thing. So we look for ourselves to go, how can we improve our behavior, rather than say, actually, there's a line in the sand and it doesn't matter how late dinner was. It doesn't matter what the children got in their school reports. I'm not going to be spoken to like that. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's our spouse or a partner, or it's a parent that continues to say things to us that we can just draw boundaries and go, actually, no, I'm not going to put up with that anymore, just because we've had it in the past. And the whole red pill, blue pill thing is we can just keep going, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. Or we can actually be brave enough to confront the reality and say, actually, it's not fine. I don't like that, and I'm going to do something about it.
Yeah. And some of the things may be like you have a situation and you just don't want to deal with it. So it's I refuse to deal with it. I don't even want to think about it. I don't want to look at it. I'm just going to carry on the way that I'm going. But like the metaphor of the stoning a shoe, eventually it gets to the point where it just becomes so painful that you have to deal with it, and it's often worse. And that can be just as simple as avoiding the discipline of a self-reflection exercise. What is going on right now? What are those little chickens? Is there stress? Is there pain? Is there something that I'm just ignoring that I probably need to be focusing on right now? And why does that thought keep coming back into my head?
And I think in the relationship sense, there's two things that can be really helpful for you to recognize whether it's actually time to face or confront some reality. And one of those things is I chat to my girlfriends sometimes, and they'll sometimes say things like, I don't like the way my boyfriend talks to me. Sometimes I wish he'd just hit me. And I go, what? Like, what do you mean? And they say, because it would be really clear then. I've got a really clear line that if somebody was physically abusive with me, that's easy. That's easy. That's my line. Off you go, right? Whereas the fact that I'm being spoken to or treated in this way, it feels murkier. It feels like, maybe I need to accept it or whatever. The reality about that situation is, the lines just keep getting redrawn. So you go, okay, I'm not going to accept anybody swearing at me. And then the first time someone swears at you, they go, oh, well, it was only the B word. They didn't call me an effing B, so that's okay. And so the recognition point is when you are saying, oh, I wish the boundary was more easily crossed because then I could take action. You define where your boundaries are. So you recognize every time, and that's when we talk professionally, this becomes particularly important. You recognize every time that a boundary's been crossed, and recognize every time you're just letting that go, and in whose name are you letting that go? And the second thing that I think is helpful in a personal context is when you say, if you've been blessed to have children, how would you feel if your children were experiencing the thing that you are prepared to put up with? Right? So if I think about some of my friendships that have perhaps in the past, I haven't been stoked with how it's gone in terms of some of the things my friends may have said to me, or the lack of support that I felt in certain situations. And I know if I talk to myself about it, I make all these kind of exceptions. Oh, that person's a bit this and this person's about that. And yet I know if it was Portia's friends, I'd be saying, fuck him. You don't need friends like that. Get out. Do not. We see it more clearly when we have some distance with it. We wouldn't want our children to experience that. So why do we have a lesser standard for ourselves? Why are we less likely to confront the reality ourselves? I think those are interesting questions.
Well, let's continue into the professional side. as you've kind of brought that up, and look for where we might be ignoring something. Or maybe it's even that you don't want to take the blue pill and look at the reality because suddenly that may cause you more stress than you're willing to take on, right? So the opportunity that comes up that you just don't see or don't want to see, because actually if I take that, I could get exposed. Right? So it could be there's a skill deficit, a confidence deficit, and by putting myself out there, a little bit of imposter syndrome might be nagging away, but also the fear of, but what if I do it and I'm wrong? Or what if I do it and it doesn't work? Or what if I do it and people judge me? Because that can be hard pill to swallow.
Easier to just say, no, I'm good where I am now, thanks. I don't want anything more. I think the reason that we stay in denial is because if we swallow the other pill and we get a really good look at how things actually are, it would require change, and change is scary. Yeah. So as soon as you recognize in your job and you say, actually, I don't really like my job, that's much harder, because then you're choosing to go to a job you don't like every day. That's much harder than just saying, my job's fine. Like, one is easier to live with in the short term. Yeah. But it's not easier in the long term.
And it may be that, if you think back to the Matrix movie, there's the guy that has been out of the Matrix for a long time and wants back in, right? Yeah. He took the blue pill and now he's going, screw you, Morpheus. I was quite happy in my ignorance and my bliss, and now I've got the reality of the situation and I don't want it anymore. I want to be plugged back into the Matrix.
I relate to that, because I feel like that about politics and the reality of the world, right? So at various times I'm like, I need to get more engaged and I need to be part of the solution to improve our society. And then as soon as I spend any time in there, I go, this is hard. It's killing me. I have to confront some of these issues. They're hard. I don't know how to solve it. I'm just going to go back to being the business chick. If I'm just the business chick, I go, my job is to deliver value for our guests and to deliver value to our shareholders, and someone else will take care of society. It's a much easier world to live in. As soon as you start caring about things that are bigger than your immediate worldview, or your immediately what's in front of you, it's hard. What are you going to do about Gaza and Ukraine and the Sudan and women in Afghanistan and women in Texas and so on and so forth ad infinitum, right? And when the answer is, well, you can't do much and then you're not doing enough, and I'm like, yeah, no, I'm the business person. How is your coffee? Because it's like it's safer and it's nicer over here.
And you can't unsee stuff. You can't undo some things. You can't unlearn the information. So although you may put attempts up to block things out that aren't serving you, the reality is Pandora's out of the box, right? You've suddenly now got all of the information as opposed to the fraction of the information. And that can be a good thing, but it can also be that there's some consequences as a result of that.
Well, surely our argument has to be we think it's worth it. We think it's worth taking the blinkers off, having a good look and confronting the reality of your situation. So if you've got someone at work who's being a real dick to you all of the time and you go, no, it's fine, I'm just going to do my job, that serves you for a purpose, for a point in time you can keep going. At some point you've got to say, I'm not going to be spoken to like that. I'm going to address this, and either that person's going or they're improving or we're not working together. That's harder, but ultimately it's better for you. Ultimately you get clear of what it is that you are asking yourself to suck up all day, every day. You would be horrified if your child was in a working situation like that. Don't require yourself to do it. Take some action.
And then the other one might just be simple health stuff that we're ignoring. As I said before, you're experiencing some pain, some aches, things aren't quite the same as they used to be. And by ignoring them, they often don't just go away. I mean, we'd like to think we could just put our head in the sand.
I'm only laughing because one of my good friends from university, I think I've told this story before, one of his testicles just got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Yeah. And when he finally went to the doctor, it was the size of a grapefruit. And you can imagine the doctor going, it didn't get to be a grapefruit overnight. Like it started out regular size and then maybe it blew up to be a mandarin. And when it was the size of a mandarin, you thought, it's fine. And then when it got to be the size of an orange, you're like, it's fine. Like at what point were you going to say, probably shouldn't ignore this anymore? And we can laugh at that example, but there's lots of little indications we get around our health that we go, oh, tomorrow, or it'll be fine. It's just one piece of pie every night.
I'm always good for things in the morning. You kind of go, yep, I'm just going to make sure that I eat really well today and I'm going to do the exercise. And then you kind of get into the afternoon and it all starts to become quite hard. And then you repeat back into the habit or the pattern. And then you're really good in the morning again. I'm going to get back on track. So it's interesting even how we trick ourselves or play our own games with the way that we operate or choose to behave.
It's that classic when people confront the reality of their health situation and take action, they never regret doing that. They only ever regret that they didn't start sooner, that they weren't brave enough to look themselves in the mirror and say, I need to take action around these things because these current habits don't serve me. What am I ignoring? What do I need help with?
All right, so that's our trip down memory lane as we explore the matrix just a little bit, pull on the threads, but really look at the learnings around this choice of, do we want to deal with the reality of maybe what's going on? Do we want to kind of look behind the scenes a little bit, take the blue pill and explore the things that we just feel aren't quite right? But maybe it's as simple as just taking the time to do a bit of a sense check. How are you feeling? How are you coping at the moment? Is there any pain? Is there any aches? Is there any behaviors that you kind of go, I wonder what that's all about? A little bit of self-exploration is always a good thing.
What are the things you know to be true and you hear when you are alone in that still and quiet space, but you're just a little bit scared of acknowledging? What are those things? And could you tackle those? I am about to go on a little family holiday. We are going with an extended family. So not an extended family, my extended family. Not just, we found a family and said, can we be extended with you? So going on holiday is extended. And it's so funny, everyone's approach to packing. And the thing that I have to recognize is that because it might not be because of this. I think because I travel a lot, I have a very cavalier approach to how much time it takes to pack, like no time at all. And I have very recent knowledge of the fact that when you go places, they have stuff. So even if you forget something, there's stuff where we're going, and we could borrow stuff or buy stuff if we had to. It's going to be okay. But various members of my family have been packing for weeks and doing lists, and good for them. There's no judgment across this, but it's just fascinating to watch. Everybody has a slightly different timetable and a slightly different idea of what's absolutely essential and must come with us and what's like, yeah, no worries. So at one end, a nameless person is purchasing nothing in advance of the trip. Everything that person needs to go to a place that they have never visited before, they already have. And at the other end is somebody who will not remain nameless, Portia Houston, who thinks, yep, I'm going to need new, not everything, but new lots of things in order to go to a place I've been to lots of times before. So it's just it's fascinating. And no right or wrong, just how it plays out is really, really interesting. What I do know is that if anybody needs anything, Portia will have it.
Brilliant.
And I know she won't give it to the guy who did not need anything.
Well, I've decided we've got a family holiday coming up in a few weeks, and I have decided to do a different approach to packing because I'm not a very good packer. So if I'm on a short trip, I overpack. I just go big bag, shove it all in. If I don't need it, it goes back in, the drawer. But this time I said to Joe, I'm not taking a bag. Well, I am going to take a bag, but I'm not going to put anything in it. So I'm going to pack all the stuff I need into everyone else's bag, and we're going to have one bag that's completely empty, so that you girls can shop your asses off and fill that bag, because otherwise what happens is when we go to come home, we have all of this stuff and I spend all this time stressing out because I can't get it into the luggage. So I'm going to rectify that.
We are a family that have too many suitcases precisely for that reason. While you guys are all buying stuff, I'll buy the suitcase. We're going to bring it home.
Yeah.
And I commend you at having a sharing approach. We have many family holidays where that in itself, over many, many years, where we go to pack and Portia's suitcase is full. My suitcase is full. Tiger's suitcase is full. Chris's suitcase, plenty of room. And we'll say, oh, would you be able to take this sweatshirt for me? And he gives this look like,
I'm not your mule.
I'm not your mule. I need to be able to answer truthfully. I packed my own suitcase. I'm not carrying anything for anyone else. And so the three of us have got these heaving suitcases, and Chris is just like, light as a feather. I planned it. If you guys can't organize yourself, and I'm like, the children are 4 and 8. Take a sweatshirt.
What are they going to pack in your suitcase? Cocaine?
Well, there was that one time.